Welcome to Now in the 90s, where we look at the game releases of 30 years ago today. This week, Sonic the Hedgehog spin dashes into a disc, gets flipped up into some bumpers for mega points, and brings chaos to the handheld. Hi, I'm your host, Jared, and today is November 24th, 1993. Sonic Tuesday. It was November 24th, 1992. The day that Sega of America celebrated the launch of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on Sega Genesis, 1 year after Sonic 1. It was them taking Sonic from a video game hit to becoming a multimedia franchise star. A way to go from just being another video game character to a cultural phenomenon. Now, a year after that, they were ready to do it again. Except, there was no Sonic the Hedgehog 3 ready for it. Not having a proper follow-up to keep the steam running would be a missed opportunity. So if they weren't going to be able to have a Sonic the Hedgehog 3, they would instead have 3 Sonic the Hedgehogs. Released on November 23rd, 1993 for the Sega CD, was Sonic CD. Sonic CD is an action platformer starring Sonic the Hedgehog. Run through levels at top speed, jump on enemies to defeat them, spin dash as an attack or boost of speed, all while collecting life-protecting rings. Gather enough speed and you'll be able to time travel, going through past, present, and future versions of every level. Fight Dr. Robotnik or Eggman and his minions at the end of acts in varying boss fights, find the time stones, and save the world from Metal Sonic. 1993 was a very big year for Sonic. Sonic 2 released at the end of 1992, and going into 1993, he was everywhere. His first animated series, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, began airing on Saturday mornings at the beginning of September. Then he got a second cartoon series titled Sonic the Hedgehog, airing on weekday afternoons just a couple of weeks later. By this time, Sonic was everywhere and constantly in the eyes of kids and fans alike. Thus, going into the jam-packed holiday season, to follow up Sonic Tuesday of last year, 1993 had Sonic Mania Day on November 24th with the release of 3 Sonic the Hedgehog games.
If you've got a Genesis, or a Game Gear, or a Sega CD, there are new Sonic games coming. As you'll see on Sonic Mania Day, they're really fast.
Sonic CD was the biggest of the 3. First previews of it showed up in the March 1993 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, showcasing a very early preview build, but not so early that it stepped on the toes of the recently released Sonic 2. Its development began as an upgraded port of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game for Sega CD, but it very quickly became its own thing, which happened to include some original ideas that couldn't fit in the original game, like Sonic doing some time travel. Previews also showed off the appearance of an all-new character, Amy Rose, aka Rosie the Rascal. She was described as Sonic's new sidekick that was obsessed with him, with future-telling tarot card reading powers. It also revealed Metal Sonic, a robot nemesis of Sonic that would quickly become a fan favorite. Funnily enough, in the instruction manual for the North American release, it refers to Amy Rose as Princess Sally, fresh off the Sonic cartoon. GamePro magazine made the same mistake twice on 2 separate occasions. A new game coming on a compact disc was used as a major selling point. It not only meant a big reason for people to go out and buy a Sega CD, it's also a big reason people should buy Sonic CD. The format allowed for much more memory and space for more game, to which Sega of America used to state that Sonic CD has 70 levels, if you count the different time period versions. Of course, there was also cinematics. Shots from the introduction movie showed essentially a third Sonic cartoon, and that was really exciting. And it had sick music with lyrics. The soundtrack was very techno and house music inspired, which is surprising that almost all of the music in the game was changed at the last minute. Sega of America did not like the soundtrack and did not think it would vibe with the audience. They brought in Spencer Nilsson and David Young, who did the music for both Echo CD games and the Spider-Man Sega CD game. However, because of doing this, Sega of America had to delay the release of Sonic CD by 2 months. It was supposed to come out in September, the same day as the Japanese release, and in the same month as the 2 Sonic cartoons. When it finally did release, everyone loved Sonic CD. EGM awarded it an 8.5 out of 10, loving the gameplay, the graphics, and all the levels, but hated the bonus stages for being, quote, awesome possum levels of choppy. Still, they said it's potentially Game of the Year, even if there isn't much new here for Sonic. GamePro magazine awarded it perfect scores in every category. Since then, Sonic CD has been included in numerous compilation games and remasters, from Sonic Gems Collection to being on the App Store to being fan remastered, and then that included on the Sonic Origins collection. Of course, not a lot of people had the Sega CD, so they needed something for their main platform. Also released on November 23rd, 1993, was Sonic Spinball for the Sega Genesis.
This is what it feels like. It's Sonic. It's pinball. It's new Sonic Spinball. It's faster.
Sonic Spinball is a platforming pinball game. Play as Sonic, who is also your pinball, as you knock him around the stage, defeat enemies to earn points, but also to unlock new areas and find the Chaos Emeralds. If Sonic lands on the floor, you can control him to get back onto your flippers or avoid death traps. Find the secret stages, still have boss fights at the end, stop the volcano from erupting, and save the animals. Going into 1993, Sega of America had a brilliant, foolproof strategy to dominate the holiday season. Release Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Then, when Sega of Japan informed them that Sonic 3 wouldn't be ready until sometime in 1994, Sega of America said, "Oh crap, what do we do?" Enter Sega Technical Institute, the same development team that took it upon themselves to create Sonic the Hedgehog 2. One of the main things they got from seeing everyone play Sonic 2 was that one of the most popular levels in the entire game was Casino Night Zone. It was a stage that featured pinball-like flippers, bumpers giving points, and a slot machine. They got the idea to make an entire game based on those levels. It would also mean that they would have less than a year to make the game. It meant a lot of scrambling, shifting of staff members, and entirely changing over the programming language they use just to make sure they could get it done faster. This is also the main reason why the final game is a little janky and has some frame rate issues. The issues with Spinball didn't end there. You know the Sonic the Hedgehog theme song? The one that plays in the Sonic 1 and 2 at the title screen, and when he gets the invincibility power-up? Sega doesn't actually own the rights to that song. And that was the theme song used for Sonic Spinball. After Sega of Japan informed Sega Technical Institute of this problem, literally right before the game was supposed to ship out, composer Howard Drawson had to make an all-new theme song in 2 hours. The first preview of Sonic Spinball didn't appear until the September issue of Sega Visions, then a couple more in EGM the 2 months after. It wasn't a lot of time to advertise, but they did what they could with magazine adverts and a television commercial and a contest with Lifesavers candy. At its release, reviewers found Sonic Spinball to be pretty good. EGM rated it a 7 out of 10, liking the novelty of it all, but the stuttery frame rate was a downfall. And GamePro gave it pretty high remarks all around. Perhaps the most surprising thing was that Sonic Spinball sold really well overall. They were afraid people wouldn't accept the game because it wasn't a typical Sonic game. But after all the sales, their only real regret was not getting the time they needed to polish it up. Sonic Spinball has also been included in numerous Sonic compilations. Throw a dart and you'll hit one of them. It also did well enough and got enough of a following that it got a spiritual sequel with Sonic Pinball Party for the Game Boy Advance. Well, that's the Sega CD and the Genesis, but there was one more platform they had to cover. Also released on November 23rd, 1993, was Sonic Chaos for the Sega Game Gear. Sonic Chaos is a side-scrolling platformer. Play as Sonic or Tails as you run, jump, and defeat enemies while getting to the end of each stage. Collect rings to sustain an extra hit, get an extra life, and get into bonus stages to get the Chaos Emeralds. Get some new power-ups like all-new rocket shoes that lets you fly across the stage. Defeat some bosses at the end of zones, and stop Dr. Robotnik from doing whatever it is he's doing this time. Sonic Chaos is the first original Sonic game for the Game Gear, as all the other ones were ports or remakes of sorts, mostly from Sega Master System games. It is based heavily on Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Master System, which never released in the States, so Sonic Chaos also came out onto the Master System, but only in Europe. Everywhere else got the Game Gear version. They tried everything they could to up the 8-bit game to reach the level of the 16-bit counterparts. Even things like having a playable Tails or that corkscrew track effect really helped the game stand above previous Game Gear Sonic games. When it came out, Sonic Chaos was seen as awesome. EGM gave it the Gold Award with an 8.25 out of 10, and GamePro magazine also loved it. It was seen as one of the best games you could get for your Game Gear. Sonic Chaos stayed as a top seller for the handheld up through January 1994. These days, it's seen as a way too easy, almost generic Sonic game that's also over in like 30 minutes. Much like many other Sonic games, it's been included everywhere. It wasn't unlockable in Sonic Adventure DX, it's in Sonic Mega Collection Plus, and you can play it right now through Sonic Origins Plus for like every platform. It also did well enough to get another Game Gear title next year with Sonic Triple Trouble. And some say he's quadruple trouble. For everything else released this week, here's Editor Dylan.
Cosmic Spacehead for the Genesis is either a sequel or a remake imagining of a game we already covered exactly 1 year ago in the Sonic 2 episode. It was called Linus Spacehead's Cosmic Crusade, and it was weird. A unique, unlicensed point-and-click puzzle platformer with a bizarre cartridge to get past Nintendo's lockout something or other. I don't know, just watch the episode. And this Genesis version is still all of those things, including the mutated cart. Personally, I'm not a big fan of point-and-click adventure games because of a certain rubber chicken with a pulley in the middle. I don't want to get into it. But I still recommend giving it a shot for the uniqueness alone. I'm much more into the platformer side of things, which the Genesis also got with Pink Goes to Hollywood. Pink is a panther with an invisible jazz band who follows him around wherever he goes, which sounds cool, but they only know just the one song. And by golly gosh, they play the hell out of it as you platform your way through various Hollywood sets. From western to spooky to refrigerated, some were less traditional than others. But it really isn't too bad, and it's one of the more polished licensed side-scrollers in a sea of mediocrity. I'm really trying to make an effort to be more positive in these sections. So I'm sorry. Steel Talons, I'm sorry, but when it comes to flight sims, man, the SNES was not built for them, dude. I hate to say it. Don't get me wrong, you got some impressive 3D visuals for 93. Clearly, a lot of effort was put in here. But this frame rate, woof. This must be how PC players see modern console games, and I finally understand how you feel. Also, do we or do we not like flying through rings? I feel like the lines are blurring over the years. And for every Superman 64 or Steel Talons, there are counterpoints like Spider-Man or Star Fox. I don't know. It's just I'm tired of flying through rings. But I can admit, I'm probably just not cut out for those kind of games. After all, where did I learn to fly?
Here's Benjamin Hall on the Jaguar system to play Cybermorph. Let's see how those beastly graphics and intricate moves that only come from 64 bits of Mega Power feel. Then...
I cut the ad short because some people eat while watching the show, and I don't like to waste food. And Cybermorph is a wasted opportunity to show off the capabilities of 64 bits. According to a very reliable source called The Comment Section, this game was originally meant for the Atari Panther, but since that was scrapped, this pack-in title could be run on half the power of the Jaguar. Alright, I tried it. I'm going back to calling it the Jaguar. Oh, and the phoned-in effort doesn't stop there. Apparently, there are two versions of this game, the original and a stripped down version meant to cut more costs. This is the version where Mrs. Greenface infamously spews the phrase, "Where did you learn to fly?" every single time you take damage, rather than every once in a while. But hey, at least the frame rate is more tolerable, so that's something. The same could also be said about Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy. Nice, tolerable frame rate. I told you I was trying harder to stay positive. Unfortunately, that's the only positive thing I could think of. This game honestly feels like a joke. You could find better games on Newgrounds circa 2003. Oh, one more positive. At least I don't have to fly through any goddamn rings. They're called hoops in this one. Alright, enough schlock. Let's talk about a better, albeit difficult, space shooter over on the SNES called Supernova, or Darius Force depending on where you live. It's got way better polish, controls, visuals, audio, and especially premise. Shoot big-ass kaiju-sized mechanized sea creatures in space. What more could you want? Well, maybe a little context wouldn't hurt. Let's give this game our own little spin. Let's call these things Reapers, and we'll call the ship Normandy. Pilot the Normandy through several stages to find out the Reapers have been harvesting humans to build a giant Reaper version of one, and you're the only one to take it down. That premise I totally made up sounds so cool and original that I worked up an appetite. And we could use a break from all these space shooters, so you know what? We're going out to lunch. On the Super Nintendo is basically a platformer with the premise of Panic Restaurant. It's double the bits, but half the fun. Less variety, less charm, and frustrating gameplay make this one a hard pass for me. But after some platformers, a flight sim, and a smattering of space shooters, I have just one question for you. Are you all ready for this? Are you ready for what kind of game this music introduces? Obviously, there's only one genre of game that warrants this song to play. Released right after the beginning of a brand new basketball season in 1993, was none other than a space shooter. I gotta admit, I wasn't ready for this. Biometal is a horizontal shmup with a completely fitting and competent soundtrack. Here's a sample. Then Activision gets a hold of it and says, you know what? This music won't vibe well with the Western market. All we like here is techno and house music. Everyone knows that. Except maybe Sega. Someone give me the new hotness in that exact music genre circa 1992/1993. 2 Unlimited, you say? Call up Radical Records. Or is it Byte Records? Okay, call them both. Because 2 Unlimited is the perfect fit for this kind of game. And so they remade the soundtrack based off of their latest album at the time. Mark my words, these songs will be synonymous with sci-fi space shooters. And nobody tell Sega. Better yet, tell them we all hate techno, especially in platformers. It'll be hilarious. 10 games came out on these consoles this week in 1993. Maybe I got it backwards and it was actually Sega who gave Activision the idea that techno is much more suitable for shmups than platformers. Great, I'm gonna be thinking about this throughout the entire turkey-fueled weekend.
Right on, man. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
There's a 70% chance I'll be in a self-administered food coma by the time this video drops.
Fantastic.
I'll try to save y'all some leftovers. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, Dylan. Here in the Collector's Corner Sonic CD release costing $59.99. It's still a coveted Sega CD game, so it's $40 for the disc and $75 for everything together. Sonic Spinball, not so much. It had a $49.99 price tag at release, and now you can get it for only $6, which isn't a bad deal. Neither is only $15 for a complete copy. Sonic Chaos had the cheaper handheld release price of $39.99. It's easy to find the game for about $8 these games, and a complete copy goes right back up to $40. And that's it for today. Next week, another pinball spin-off, a good licensed game that you wouldn't expect, and one of the finest RPGs you could possibly ask for on the Sega CD. I'm your host, Jared, and this was Now in the 90s. Thank you so much for watching Now in the 90s. I want to thank some new patrons who've just signed up recently, like Ronald Taylor, Daniel Durso, and Aquinon. Please like the video and leave a comment down below, especially if you've played any of these Sonic games this week, and subscribe if you aren't already. And if you already are a subscriber, thank you so much for watching this show every single Friday. I know we just talked about like all the Sonic games, but of all of them, the only one I really played was Sonic Spinball, which I actually thought was really, really cool. And I remember my older brother's friend bringing his Genesis over and showing this off, and I was just mesmerized that Sonic could do other things aside from just run from left to right. And I loved Casino Night Zone.